Today we're gonna talk about something pretty interesting. It's this connection between what's going on in your gut and how
Yeah.
your skin looks.
Totally.
We all kind of have this intuitive sense that, what we eat impacts our skin, but
Yeah.
we're really gonna deep dive on that today.
Exactly. And I think what's so fascinating about it is like we often think about skin health as like topical creams and, serums and stuff.
Right.
But really, like it all starts within.
Yeah.
And your gut health is so important for skin health.
Right. And we're not just talking about like, you eat a greasy pizza and you break out kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. It's much deeper than that.
It's deeper than that. Yeah.
It's about the trillions of microorganisms that live in your gut,
Right.
your gut microbiome. It plays a huge role in overall health, including the health of your skin.
Yeah.
When it's out of balance, it can lead to inflammation. And that inflammation can show up on your skin as acne, rosacea, even premature aging.
Right. And so that's why we're doing this deep dive today, is to really kind of lay out, okay, what are some of the common foods that we're eating that are maybe contributing to some of this inflammation and some of these problems.
Exactly.
And then we'll also get into, what are some better choices? What are some things we can do?
Absolutely.
So we really go through kind of the whole arc of it.
Yeah.
So
My practical takeaway.
yeah, practical takeaways.
Yeah.
So let's jump into it. There's 7, I guess, main categories that we kind of pulled out from our sources.
Yeah.
Why don't you lay them out for us?
Sure. So we're going to be looking at artificial sweeteners,
Okay.
those sugar-free alternatives,
Yeah.
highly processed vegetable oils
Okay.
like soybean oil, canola oil, those kinds of things,
Okay.
gluten-containing grains,
Okay.
conventional dairy products,
Okay.
ultra-processed foods, which is a very broad category, but we'll get into specifics there,
Right.
high fructose corn syrup,
Okay.
and alcohol. So a lot of things that are
Yeah, a lot of the staples of the American diet.
exactly.
Let's dig in. Let's start with those artificial sweeteners, because
Okay.
those are things I think a lot of people turn to, thinking, oh, this is going to be a healthier alternative.
Right. You think you're doing something good for yourself,
Yeah.
but there's growing evidence that suggests that they can actually have a really negative impact on your gut microbiome.
Yeah. Okay. So how do they
Yeah.
actually do that? What's the mechanism there?
Well, so they essentially disrupt the balance of your gut bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually reduce the populations of beneficial bacteria,
Oh, wow.
which are essential for maintaining healthy skin.
Okay.
They can also increase inflammation in the gut.
Okay.
And we've already talked about how inflammation is a major driver of skin problems.
Right.
So it's kind of this double whammy of reducing the good guys and increasing the bad guys, essentially.
Okay. So it's not just that they're empty calories and not providing nutrition.
Exactly. It's not just that.
They're actually actively disrupting the gut.
It's like this active disruption. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we have any, I guess, studies or research that really back this up?
Yeah. There's a pretty compelling study that was published in the Journal of Gastroenterology.
Okay.
And what they found was that people who regularly consume artificial sweeteners were more likely to develop glucose intolerance,
Oh, wow.
which is essentially a precursor to type 2 diabetes.
Right.
And the researchers believe that this is happening because the artificial sweeteners are disrupting the gut microbiome.
Okay.
And that disruption is leading to metabolic changes that ultimately result in systemic inflammation.
Yeah.
And we already know how that story ends.
That inflammation is not doing us any favors.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a bummer, because I feel like those artificial sweeteners are just everywhere you go.
they are. It's really hard to avoid them.
Yeah.
They're in so many processed foods, drinks, even things that you think are healthy,
Right.
like, protein bars or yogurt or whatever.
Right.
So it's definitely
Yeah.
something to be mindful of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another one of these, I guess, categories of foods that are kind of in everything.
Yeah.
The highly processed vegetable oils.
Yes. So these are things like soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil,
Right.
and they're ubiquitous in the modern diet.
They're in everything.
They really are.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the ingredient list of most processed foods,
Yeah.
you're going to find one of those oils.
Yep.
And one of the major issues with these oils is their high omega-6 fatty acid content.
Okay. And so what's wrong with omega-6?
So it's not that omega-6s are inherently bad.
Okay.
We need them. They're essential fatty acids.
Okay.
The problem is the ratio. In the typical modern diet, we're consuming way too many omega-6s
Okay.
and not enough omega-3s.
And omega-3s are the...
Omega-3s are the good guys. They're anti-inflammatories. And so when you have this imbalance,
Okay.
it can actually promote inflammation throughout the body.
Got it.
And that inflammation, as we've discussed, can show up on your skin.
As all of these problems we've been talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not just the fatty acid ratio.
Right.
There's something else going on with these highly processed oils, right?
Yes. So the way that these oils are processed
Go ahead.
often involves high heat, chemical solvents, all sorts of things that can actually damage the structure of the oil.
Okay.
And when you consume these damaged oils,
Okay.
they can irritate your gut lining.
Okay.
And that irritation can trigger inflammatory pathways that can also contribute to skin problems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a double whammy again.
Yeah. So we got the fatty acid imbalance.
Yeah.
And then we also have
And then the actual processing.
the processing itself is creating problems.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we really got to watch out for those. Okay, let's talk about another one that's very popular and trendy right now, which is gluten.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, hear about gluten and are like, oh, well, I don't have celiac disease.
Right.
So I don't need to worry about it.
Exactly. And I think that's a really common misconception.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to have celiac disease to experience negative effects from gluten.
Okay.
There's something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Okay.
And it's estimated that it actually affects a much larger percentage of the population.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so even if you don't have celiac disease, if you're sensitive to gluten, it can still damage your gut.
Okay. And so how does it do that if you don't have celiac?
So essentially what happens is gluten can compromise the tight junctions in your intestinal lining.
Okay.
Imagine your gut lining as like a finely woven net.
Okay.
And that net is supposed to control what gets into your bloodstream.
Okay.
Gluten can basically create little tears in that net.
Okay.
And that can lead to what's known as leaky gut. And leaky gut is essentially when larger undigested food particles can escape into your bloodstream.
Okay.
And your immune system sees those particles as foreign invaders.
Okay.
And so it mounts an inflammatory response.
Oh, okay.
And that inflammation, you guessed it, can manifest on your skin.
As acne and redness and all of that.
Exactly.
So basically, gluten is kind of tearing holes in our intestines and letting stuff into our bloodstream that's not supposed to be there.
That's a good way to put it.
And then our body's freaking out. And
freaking out, attacking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the skin is kind of like the
battleground.
Yeah, the battleground.
Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of evidence do we have for this?
Well, there's a really interesting study that was published in the Journal of Clinical Dermatology in 2022.
Okay.
And they looked at adults with chronic acne.
Okay.
And they had them eliminate gluten from their diets for 12 weeks.
Okay.
And they didn't make any other changes to their skincare routine.
Okay.
Just eliminating gluten. And what they found was that 67% of the participants experienced a significant improvement in their skin.
Wow.
Just by eliminating gluten.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's almost 70% improvement just by taking out one thing.
Exactly.
So that's pretty powerful.
It is.
Okay.
Let's move on. Let's talk about conventional dairy.
Okay.
Milk, cheese, yogurt.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that stuff?
Well, there are a couple of issues with conventional dairy.
Oh.
Firstly, it often comes from cows that are treated with hormones and antibiotics.
Right.
And when we consume those products, those hormones and antibiotics can end up in our bodies.
Right.
And they can disrupt our own hormonal balance.
Okay.
And secondly, conventional dairy contains a protein called A1 casein.
Okay.
And a lot of people have difficulty digesting A1 casein.
Okay.
And when it's not properly digested, it can create inflammatory compounds in the gut.
So it's not just the lactose then?
Of course, it's not just lactose. It's also the hormones, the antibiotics, and this A1 casein.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those inflammatory compounds can then trigger a cascade of reactions that can lead to skin problems.
Okay.
Acne, rosacea, even psoriasis in some people.
Right.
And the hormonal aspect is particularly relevant for women.
Okay.
Because dairy can actually exacerbate hormonal fluctuations.
Okay.
Which can lead to those cyclical breakouts that a lot of women experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not doing us any favors.
No.
Okay.
Not really.
Let's move on. Let's talk about ultra-processed foods.
Okay.
Now, this is a broad category.
Yes. It is a very broad category.
What do we even mean by ultra-processed foods?
So essentially, ultra-processed foods are foods that have been highly processed.
Okay.
They typically contain a long list of ingredients,
Okay.
many of which you can't even pronounce.
Right.
Things like emulsifiers, preservatives, artificial colors and flavors.
For like the stuff that you would never have in your pantry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these ingredients, they can really wreak havoc on your gut microbiome.
Oh, okay.
They can alter the composition of your gut bacteria,
Okay.
often decreasing the beneficial strains and increasing the harmful strains.
Okay.
They can also damage the protective mucus lining in your intestines,
Okay.
which is essential for preventing harmful substances from leaking into your bloodstream.
Right.
And so all of this can lead to dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in your gut bacteria.
Okay.
And that imbalance can then lead to chronic low-grade inflammation.
Right. And we've talked about how that's kind of
The root of all evil.
the root of all evil.
When it comes to skin problems, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's more than just the fact that these foods are, low in nutrition.
Right.
Not providing us with.
It's not just the absence of good things.
Right.
It's the presence of bad things.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So we got to watch out for those.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about high fructose corn syrup. This is another one that seems to be everywhere.
It is. It's sneaky.
Yeah.
It's in so many things that you wouldn't even expect.
Yeah.
And it's more than just empty calories.
Yeah.
When you consume a lot of high fructose corn syrup, it can overwhelm your liver,
Okay.
and it can disrupt your body's metabolic processes.
Okay.
And this can lead to the creation of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs.
Oh, AGs. Okay. And what are those?
So AGEs are basically these harmful compounds that damage collagen and elastin,
Okay.
which are the proteins that keep your skin firm and elastic.
Right. So those are not our friends.
Not our friends at all.
Okay.
And so by damaging collagen and elastin, AGEs can contribute to wrinkles, sagging skin, all sorts of signs of premature aging.
So high fructose corn syrup is basically like aging us from the inside out.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Well,
But there's more.
there's more.
What else does it do in the gut?
So high fructose corn syrup can also disrupt the balance of your gut bacteria.
Okay.
It can feed the harmful bacteria
Okay.
while reducing the beneficial bacteria.
Okay.
And that imbalance can then lead to digestive issues
Okay.
as well as inflammatory skin conditions like acne.
So it's kind of a double whammy there, too.
It is.
It's aging us and it's messing up our gut.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup, you're out.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the last one on our list of 7.
Okay.
Alcohol.
Okay.
A lot of us enjoy a glass of wine or a cocktail here and there.
Yeah.
What's the problem with alcohol when it comes to gut and skin health?
Well, alcohol can irritate the lining of your digestive tract.
Okay.
It can reduce the populations of beneficial gut bacteria.
Okay.
And it can impair your body's ability to absorb essential nutrients,
Okay.
particularly B vitamins and zinc,
Okay.
which are really important for skin health.
Okay.
Alcohol is also dehydrating,
Right.
and it can cause fluctuations in your blood sugar levels.
Right.
And both of those things can compromise your skin barrier function, leading to dullness, fine lines, breakouts.
Right. So it's not just the next morning you wake up and you look kind of puffy. And...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
actually
Stomach's right.
it's a deeper issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually messing with our gut and our skin.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our list of 7.
Yes.
Kind of depressing, right? It's like,
Yeah, it's a little doom and gloom.
yeah, it's a little doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It's like all the stuff that tastes good.
Yeah. But the good news is
Yeah, what's the good news?
there are lots of things that you can do to support your gut and skin health.
Okay, good.
It's not all bad news.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about some solutions.
Okay.
What are some good alternatives to those artificial sweeteners?
So instead of artificial sweeteners, try using natural sweeteners like raw honey,
Okay.
maple syrup, or monk fruit.
Okay.
Those are much gentler on your gut microbiome,
Okay.
and they don't have those same negative effects.
Okay, so just straight up swap those out.
Yeah.
Okay, what about those pesky, highly processed vegetable oils?
So for cooking and baking, opt for healthier fats like extra virgin olive oil,
Okay.
avocado oil, or coconut oil.
Okay.
Those have a much better fatty acid profile.
Okay.
And they haven't been subjected to those same damaging processing methods.
So it's not all oils are created equal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about gluten? I mean, what do we do if we love bread and pasta?
Well, if you're concerned about gluten, you don't have to give up bread and pasta altogether.
Okay, good.
Just choose gluten-free varieties.
Okay.
There are lots of great options available these days.
Right.
You can also explore ancient grains like quinoa, buckwheat, and millet.
Okay.
Those are naturally gluten-free.
And those are good for the gut.
Yeah, they're very gut-friendly.
Okay.
They're high in fiber,
Okay.
which is really important for feeding your beneficial gut bacteria.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What about dairy? I know a lot of people are kind of going dairy-free these days. Yeah, it's definitely a trend.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
If you're going to consume dairy, try to choose A2 dairy products,
Okay.
which contain a different type of casein protein that's easier to digest.
Okay.
Or you can explore plant-based alternatives,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
almond milk, coconut yogurt, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are all good for the gut as
Yeah,
well?
most of them are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about those ultra-processed foods? I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a tough one because
They're so convenient.
they're so convenient and they're so tasty.
Yeah.
But the best thing you can do is really focus on cooking real food from scratch
Okay.
using whole, unprocessed ingredients.
Okay.
So that means cooking at home more often,
Okay.
packing your own lunches and snacks,
Okay.
really being mindful of what you're putting in your body.
So basically just trying to avoid that stuff as much as possible.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about high fructose corn syrup?
So high fructose corn syrup is sneaky.
Right. So many things.
Yeah.
So you really have to read labels carefully.
Okay.
And try to choose products that don't contain it.
Okay.
You can also satisfy your sweet tooth with whole fruits,
Okay.
which contain natural sugars that are much gentler on your body.
Right. And fruit has fiber too,
Exactly.
which is good for the gut.
Exactly.
Okay.
Fiber helps to slow down the absorption of sugar,
Okay.
so it doesn't spike your blood sugar levels as much.
So we're not getting those big
Those big crashes.
crashes and the cravings and all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, alcohol. I mean,
Yeah.
what do we do about that?
So moderation is key.
Okay.
If you do drink alcohol, try to stick to 1 or 2 drinks per day.
Okay.
And choose cleaner options like organic red wine or clear spirits.
Okay.
And avoid sugary mixers.
Okay.
Those will just make the negative effects worse.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the specific swaps.
Yeah. But it sounds like our sources are also saying that it's really about more than just individual foods.
Exactly. It's about adopting a more holistic approach.
Okay.
It's about creating a lifestyle that supports your gut microbiome.
Okay. So what are some things that we can do to support our gut microbiome?
Well, one of the most important things is to eat a diet that's rich in fiber.
Okay.
Fiber is food for your beneficial gut bacteria.
Okay.
It helps them to thrive and multiply.
Okay.
So make sure you're eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains,
Okay.
legumes, things like that.
There's lots of plants.
Lots of plants, yeah. Another important thing is to incorporate fermented foods into your diet.
Okay.
Fermented foods are rich in probiotics,
Okay.
which are live beneficial bacteria that can help to repopulate your gut.
Okay.
So things like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir,
Right.
yogurt, kombucha, those are all great sources of probiotics.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What else can we do?
Practice mindful eating. So that means slowing down,
Okay.
chewing your food thoroughly,
Okay.
eating in a relaxed environment,
Okay.
really paying attention to the experience of eating.
So not just like shoving it in while we're on the go.
Exactly.
Okay.
Stay hydrated.
Okay.
Water is essential for overall health,
Right.
including gut health.
Okay.
It helps to flush out toxins and keep things moving smoothly.
Okay. So we got to make sure we're drinking enough water.
Yep.
Okay.
And then finally, you might consider taking some targeted supplements
Okay.
like zinc, omega-3 fatty acids, or a probiotic supplement.
Okay. And those would all be.
Those would all help to support your gut microbiome
Okay.
and in turn, your skin health.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about, specific food swaps.
Yeah.
We've talked about kind of this broader approach to gut health.
Yeah,
Are there any other lifestyle factors that are important here?
absolutely.
Okay.
So stress management is huge. Stress can really wreak havoc on your gut microbiome.
Okay.
So it's important to find healthy ways to manage stress,
Okay.
whether that's yoga, meditation, spending time in nature,
Okay.
whatever works for you.
Okay. So whatever helps you chill out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sleep is also crucial.
Okay.
When you're sleep deprived,
Yeah.
your gut microbiome suffers,
Okay.
and that can lead to all sorts of problems, including skin problems.
Got it. So we got to prioritize sleep.
Yep.
Okay.
And then finally, exercise.
Okay.
Exercise is great for overall health,
Right.
including gut health.
Okay.
It helps to improve digestion,
Okay.
reduce inflammation,
Okay.
and promote the growth of beneficial gut bacteria.
Okay, so we got to move our bodies.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Well, that was a lot of information.
It was.
But it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is.
So basically what we're learning here is that there's this really depth connection between what's going on in our gut and the health of our skin.
Exactly.
And that by making some simple changes to our diet and our lifestyle, we can really improve both.
Absolutely.
We can actually, heal our gut and clear up our skin.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, think about which of those 7 food categories that we talked about might be the most relevant to you.
Yeah.
Think about, where you might be able to make some swaps.
Yeah.
And just start with one small change.
Yeah.
You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight.
No.
Just pick one thing and see how it goes.
Exactly.
And I think you'll be surprised at the results that you see.
I think so, too.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.